Hello everybody. So today I'm going to be going over how I set this hologram material up. Hope you enjoy the video, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions or is there something I didn't go over. Hope you enjoy the video. Before we get started, there's something I want to go over. It's basically how I set my effects, or like basically my workflow with effects. One thing I do a lot is gather reference, which is something that a lot of effects artists do. So basically, I like to get elements from reference and have them in my work. So for example, from this picture right here, I have the dots because I thought it would be something really cool to have in there. It just basically shows how, for example, if you have an LCD screen, or like you zoom in on a screen, you'll see a lot of pixel dots. For example, with this picture right here, how she has lines, basically how it's like basically like scan lines, I call them. It's basically to construct the image. Like the more they are, the more you will see. Same here with the Stormtrooper and the Obi-Wan hologram. So the more they are, the more defined you'll see the hologram. But yeah.
All right then, let's get started. So I'm gonna go over how I set this up. It has multiple material functions to basically have a bit of like a lesser clutter in my material. But yeah, so first thing I set up was a bump offset. Basically, this is where I wanted to control the basically how much of a depth I have between two textures. So yeah, hold on. Let me just turn off this just so we would have better view, and turn this. Okay, so I started off with a bump offset, so this would give me a little bit of a depth in my texture. So what this would do is, for example, if I have two textures, let's add them together. So the result from this is this. Let me just add it here. 3, 4, and do this. Okay, so what this will do, it will give it, oh, that's weird. Oh, right. Okay, so as you can see, you'll see a little bit of a distance between the two textures. And this is exactly what I'm looking for, is I want it to have a bit of a depth to it. So I can also control the offset using this. So if I set this to, let's say 0.5, or no, never mind, that's too much. So if I set back this to 1, but be careful when you use this because you'll have repeating patterns outside. So I basically keep this to like 0.5 or 0.2 and keep this to like 0.5. So it still shows a little bit of a depth in it, but it's not that aggressive. So yeah, this is what I use that for. Next is going to be the glitch material. See, the thing is, I used it as a material function because I didn't want to run into an issue where I have way too much things to worry about. So I wanted to make it a smaller material. So here I set up a texture that I wanted to be the main thing to do the glitching. So I went through this. I got inspired by Clement Lazar. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Sorry if I did. Basically, he set up a way to break up a texture using its UVs. And I got inspired to do something similar with this texture, or sorry, with this material. But yeah, so what I did is basically appended two vectors. So here I can control how the textures, like their UVs, through the append, pen them together so they would keep going up, and then I would basically do a green and red mask and multiply them together. So, and then I would have a UV coordinates with a lerp. So what I'm lerping with is basically the displacement speed, which I'm using a time, multiply, and assign. So basically this would give me, let's see, this type of result. So if I increase this to, let's say, 1500 and add it to the texture, you'll see how it's not as aggressive, but you'll see how the glitching actually affects the UVs. So that's one way for me to basically use the UVs to glitch the main texture. So yeah, and I used basically the same setup for the displacement, which is basically going to displace the texture. Trigger warning, of course. Just basically a little bit left and right using the sign. And yeah, so it would look something like this. All right, so that's for the first material function. And then I basically add them all together. I use the displacement for two textures, and then I use the glitching for two textures. So then I would have two textures that are basically displacing, and then two textures that are glitching. And I can use them by appending the textures together and then adding them all together. And the result I will get is something like this. If I go back in here, say 100 and sorry, this is way too aggressive, but you get the point. I'm gonna go back here and let's do something like this, save. Oh yeah, it's the same idea that he set it up, but I went a little bit extra with adding more textures and among other stuff, because I wanted to have displacement and the glitching in the same material function. Okay, after that, I added it to this is basically a texture that I wanted to have for the dots at the back, because kinda felt like I wanted to have it to look like an LED or LCD screen. So this was one way to set it up, which if you can take a look, I have it set up in the background here. Yeah, so here I basically did the same thing, which I appended two vectors into AV coordinates and multiply it into the UVs. So now I can control the coordinates individually by its vectors. And then I multiplied the texture with a density vector. It's basically just to increase the amount for it, like an emission type thing. And here I control the radius of it, and then the density of the radius, which is this, of basically how harsh it is to the sides. But yeah, and then I multiply that with the texture and then add it together, and it will give me something like this. Just gonna go back here and take this down to like 1. This is a bit distracting. Okay, that looks perfect. All right. So next I'm gonna I add a color, multiply it, and then do the emission, which is basically it multiplies the color and makes it more what's the word? Brain. Adds a bit of bloom to it. So yeah. The next step is I basically add another function, which this controls the reveal of the actual hologram. So here, again, I set up a x and a y, which is basically UV, appended and then multiply it by the text coordinates, so I can control the coordinates individually. Here, I created a mask using the coordinates. So basically a green mask to go up and down. Right. Let's see, preview. So it goes from white to black. And then I flip it to basically have something like this. So if I wanted to fade my hologram, it would fade from both sides instead of from white to dark, or like basically I just wanted it to go from the middle and outwards, or vice versa. So yeah, and here I control the reveal using a sign, and then I add it, multiply it, then add it back again. And yeah, this is basically the setup for it. And I clamped it at the end so the results don't look haywire, because this is what I was getting after a while. And the result for it wasn't that great. But yeah, so I multiply it together, and this is the output for it. All right, let's go back into the other one. Oh, let's actually save this. And here I basically just added to the emissive color. So for the actual lines that you see here, basically going up and down, initially I wanted to do it in a texture, but after actually testing it out with a texture, it didn't actually work out that well, because I was getting a little bit of a pixelation in the texture. So I decided to do it through a sine wave. So first thing I actually wanted to do is when you get closer to the hologram, I wanted it to actually appear based off of distance. So I did it by pixel depth. So the further away you get, you'll see that like the slowly it fades away, the actual lines, because like they were distracting in the beginning. So I did this that way. So it would look something like this. So when you go all the way back, it will show up. But if you do a 1 minus, it will flip that. So when you get closer, it will start to show up. So yeah. Next, I clamp it, then multiply it with the text coordinates. After that, I use a component mask. and basically just get the green channel. So after that, I divide time by a vector, which here allows me to control the speed of the actual sine wave. Yeah, and then I clamp it in the end and set this into the opacity. And also, this is a unlit additive material, because if you set this up as a translucent material, you're running into this issue. So I think I am, yeah, I'm doing this here. You're running into this issue and you don't want that. So you might want to set this up as an additive unlit. Or you can do it default lit, I think. Yeah, you can, but I just leave it to lit. So yeah, this is basically how I set up the hologram material. And of course, this material instance, so you can change it however you like. Yeah, I'm just gonna this to 2. And this is what I was talking about with the tiling. This is one thing I enjoy doing, is have control over what type of stuff that I make. So part of the reason I set it up as I append it as. So for example, let's say the reveal. I didn't like the way how it's actually revealing, and I wanted the lines to be longer. Let's just set this to 1, this to 1. Nope, sorry, not this one. And for example, if I wanted it to be revealing that way, or let's say 0.25 or however you want it to be, I just didn't enjoy it, like not having control over this type of stuff. But yeah, and then I can basically just see how it will show up. For example, scan lines from like small to big, you can do basically everything you want here. And also, this is why I was really adamant on adding the depth for it, because if I didn't, it would look something like this. And to me, that wasn't really helpful, nor it was, like it didn't have complexity in it, and it felt like something was missing. So that's how I added this in it, and why I added it in it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll get to do this also as a post on madvfx.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you later.